Sunday's North London derby is the biggest in years, with Arsenal desperate to win to escape the looming shadow of that bottle job tag after they dropped points at Wolves. And Tottenham, of course, desperate for a victory in new boss Igor Tudor's first game in charge in their battle against the drop. Absolutely huge game. Question number one coming in from you guys, the Tactics Exposed Team Talk audience, of course. Can Bukayo Saka at number 10 solve Arsenal's attacking issues? Thrown in to the deep end in that number 10 role against Wigan in the cup game. Played there against Wolves also. Obviously, though, they dropped points.
Yeah, it's early days, right? But he's a top-class player. And I was doing my research. He has actually played in the middle one other time, and that was a few years ago in COVID against Brighton, where he had to play in sort of a more number 8 position. But obviously, they've developed a lot more since then, Arsenal. And just to move them into the shape that they were last night, obviously against Wolves, that was Gyokeres there, it was Madueke there, and Martinelli there, and Saka then in the nominal number 10 position. Okay, I'll just open that midfield a bit up so it's easier to see. So Bukayo Saka here, but obviously we know with Arsenal that they move into those different positions when they attack. Where when it's Ødegaard and when it was Saka last night, more in that position. Declan Rice more in that position, and Zubimendi in that position. And that's obviously before I've pushed either one of those fullbacks on, which I'll come back to in a minute. But what was interesting from Saka's touch map last night is that he spent still a lot of time over towards this side. Natural, right? Because he would have been working with Madueke in a more natural position with a bit of help from Jury and Timber in that position that Arsenal get to. But what I really liked and what was really different and what they can develop Arsenal is that often when this is Martin Ødegaard, when that is Merino or Havertz, they end up coming in here to receive the ball, and Saliba comes in and there's little passes in there. That doesn't hurt anybody. Yep. And that's part of the problem that Arsenal are having at the moment. They're not hurting teams here, but what was really good about Saka in that position was that he was here and he engaged the defender here. So straight away, you can see that space open up. They didn't use it enough, but as I said, it's early days. He's literally the Wigan game and then the Wolves game to go in there and do it. The other thing is that when you're a defender against someone like Bukayo Saka, so let's just for a second imagine that this is Bukayo Saka in this position. When you're a defender, the touch line is your friend. Right. And you see those episodes we did with Cucurella against him, the defenders that have defended against Saka the best, is that the touch line becomes an extra defender. So when you force him in that area, he can only go one way. So then let's just imagine that's Madueke again, and this is now Bukayo Saka. You've got that decision to make. Which way are you going to let him go? And that is miles more difficult to do. So even if it's the midfielder who picks him up and not one of the two defenders, you've still got this situation here where which way is he going to go? And as I've done before, lots and lots in Tactics Exposed, he takes the ball on the run. So when the pass is about to be played from one of these two players, let's imagine it's the right back, he doesn't start in the position he wants to receive the ball. He starts here, and then the space is here, the ball gets played in, and he runs into the space to receive the ball on that turn. So for me, that will solve one of their problems, which is they don't engage defenders in this area, and that allows Saka to get on the ball even more. Because you can isolate him out there. You can make him not get the ball. So that's the first thing that it solves.
He obviously has less space in that position, though, than he would be used to. How does that impact him?
Well, sometimes, yes. And that's the sort of next bit that I think I wanted to get onto about the space. So, look, we'll come on to Tottenham in a minute, but most teams against Arsenal end up in at least a back five at the moment, okay? And then we'll come on to Gyokeres soon. But let's imagine that this is Saka and this is Declan Rice, this is Martin Zubimendi, and then, as I say, they will release one, if not two fullbacks, okay? So let's say that they release Timber and they push him in there, and let's say they release Calafiori and they push him in there, okay? And then you end up with that shape there. What immediately will happen is there's no way, especially Tottenham, but there's no way that a team's going to leave 3-on-3 there, okay? So they will drop another player, at least, in there and end up in that shape. So straight away, you've got this 5-3-2 defensive shape against a 3-2-5 attacking shape, okay? And there, your point is proven. Too many players in that space, too much in that area. And they get, as we've talked about before with Arsenal, they get into two little triangles, out there with the striker in between. But what that is, the problem is, as you say, no space. So here's my rogue suggestion, is don't push the fullbacks on. And everyone will go, that's counterintuitive, right? That's, oh, hang on, you're telling Arsenal to be more attacking 1 minute, and now you're telling the fullbacks not to go. But if you don't push the fullback on, right, let's just say they sit there, let one go, but not the other.
Would it be, just quickly, which one would go? The one on the opposite side to where the ball is?
Yes.
Or vice versa?
Yes, the one on the opposite side. So let's just say that the ball's coming down the left here, then Timber goes in, then Calafiori sits and defends. That then means, inevitably what will happen, look, now you've got 4v2. Naturally, an opposition team will go like that then, and then it's 4v3. We've still got an extra man in here, but you've now not got 2 extra men in there, okay? So it's not about numbers and outnumbering someone, it's about bodies in space. And that then means if you can get an occupation of bodies over here with Gyokeres, with Rice, with whoever the left winger is, Martinelli, you then could get Saka 1v1 against a defender in miles more space. So it's almost like the tactic that a lot of teams, like Manchester United have used in recent weeks, Brighton do it really well, Newcastle have done it where they have 5 back here and 5 up here. It creates space in the middle. Goad teams on so that then you can release a player in pressure and less pressure. And what Arsenal don't do very well is when Saliba gets the ball here, he gets a lot of the ball here, and Gabriel, they allow teams just to then drop back into their shape. And that then goes into that position, okay? So how about they bypass this one and go straight to a winger? And then the ball to Saka. And you get this other team going back in the opposite direction. So, look, to answer the question, he can because he is world class. And the key for Arsenal now, if he plays there on Sunday, the key for Arsenal is getting the ball to him early in space when he's not against 2 players.
Yeah, interesting because he's obviously a world-class winger, isn't he? Whether or not he's a world-class.
Yeah, he's a world-class footballer, and and players can move positions all the time. I've seen this debate online this week: who would be your, if you had to pick one player in every position, who would it be? For me, it's probably Declan Rice. But they can play in more than one position.
I must admit though, it's quite unique, isn't it, for a winger? The wingers can play both sides, of course, and often, as we're seeing this season, thinking Brian and Burma, Man United in particular, play up front as well. It is rare, isn't it, that they can sort of do both jobs of an out-and-out winger and the number 10?
Yeah, it is, but you saw straight away Saka's danger in Wolves. It took them 4 minutes that he can, it's not actually what position you start in, it's what position you end up in. And if he gets into that number 10 position or in that striking position, he got himself in there and Declan Rice puts that lovely cross in for him to finish. But, if you're getting Saka in this position here more often, you also get the shot from him more. Because what we've had in previous games and previous episodes we've talked about, we've had this happen here. And so Man United did it brilliantly against them with Casemiro and Kobbie Mainoo blocking the corner of that box. And that means he can get in there and get crosses in, but he's not getting in here to then have a shot. And we've seen how deadly he can be from that position. I mean, I'm not excited about it for Sunday because, everyone knows I'm a Spurs fan, but I am excited from a Saka perspective of what he can do in that position. And look, it might be by the summer, we're talking about that as an option for England as well.
Absolutely, Dino. Right, let's move on to question number 2. Is Gyokeres actually getting better? Not a bad question. I think they paid quite a lot of money for Gyokeres. You've been quite pro Victor Gyokeres. You haven't given him as much of a hard time as lots of Arsenal fans have. What do you think the answer to that is?
Well, yeah, you're right. I think I've been pretty fair. And I think that a lot of the thing that we've talked about is kind of what I've just mentioned there with Saka about getting the ball up there early and being... It's hard for Arteta to do this, but be a little less controlled. And look, the North London derby is going to be chaotic. It always is. And, Arteta doesn't like not being in control. But then for someone like Victor Gyokeres, that's not the way he wants the game to be. He wants it to be fast and furious and in behind as quickly as possible.
So based on what you think on Sunday, what are you expecting to see from Arsenal, especially obviously what we said about Saka as well, but Gyokeres in particular?
Yeah, well, I've got a suspicion that Gyokeres might actually be sub and it might actually be Gabriel Jesus who plays in this game, and he's played more big Prem games than Victor Gyokeres has. Obviously, he's been here longer. But the one thing that I've been watching in recent weeks, which does show that he is getting better and he is understanding. The Wolves game is a bit of a blip on this because he only had 9 touches in the whole game. But what I wanted to talk about is, if I just drop them back into that shape again, is that in that position there, in here, you're always fighting a losing battle against 2 centre-backs, okay? Right. Just move 3 midfielders in there to make it a 4-3-3, right?
Do we think, though, that if we're talking about Sunday, you're expecting it to be 5 at the back, right?
Well, yes, but whatever happens, whether it's 3 at the back, 4 at the back, 5 at the back, most of the time now in the Premier League, a centre-forward finds himself against 2 centre-backs. Right, you know, it's very, very rare that you're going to get 1v1. Yep. And, you know, and as a Haaland, as he did against Konate against Liverpool, will try and then move over to be 1v1 when the ball comes, but in open play, they're normally deciding who they're going to go into a duel with because there's 2 of them there. Yep. So in this instance, he's really struggled because Arsenal don't play it to get the ball in these channels here, because Arsenal don't play that pass. They don't play that long direct one into that channel for him to run onto often enough. But what he has done very well in recent weeks is he comes into this deeper position where they almost, you know, when Arsenal drop into their 4-4-2 block shape, he comes into this deeper position and he's finding space here. So I've intentionally left that wide. What he's doing is he's going into there early and then they're playing it in there early. So in the middle third of the field, he's really improved his running and his transitional play. The problem is that he's not going at players 1v1 then, and he doesn't have that outright pace to beat some of these defenders 1v1. In duels, he's doing all right. He's got better. He's being more physical. But again, if Arsenal are going to get the best out of him, it's not just about is he going to get the best out of himself. If Arsenal are going to get the best out of him, they've got to give him early ball, because he's not the sort of player who's going to be giving it the little movements here around the box, the little 1-2 bits around here that go in play and behind. He's not that sort of player. They haven't bought him for that. They've bought him for when teams try and squeeze them and then you press in behind.
So yes or no then, Dean? Because it seems unlikely they're going to change their entire way of playing just to accommodate a striker. Yes or no then, before we move on to question 3. Is he doing what they bought him for?
He's doing what he does. You know, and
that wasn't a question.
Yeah, I know. I've avoided that. No, do you know what? He's not doing what they bought him for because he's not scoring enough goals. But that, to me, is not just his fault. I mean, he's. But
that's what I'm saying. Did they buy him for? Because what you're saying, they knew the system. They knew what system they were going to be playing. So did they actually buy him to score? I know it seems a silly question about a striker, but did they buy him to score goals, or did they buy him to make runs and do other stuff off the ball to make it easier for other players to score goals?
No, I think he's bought to score goals. He's bought as a striker to score goals. There was a lot of games last season where they failed to polish off a team when they were all over them. Right. And to be fair, in the first half of the season, he scored goals against Leeds is the one that comes immediately to mind, where he gets the goals that kills a game.
And everyone said last season, didn't they? Oh, the reason they're not doing that is because they haven't got a striker.
Exactly.
When they do, these games will be won.
Yeah, and if they'd have had Kai Havertz fit all season, if Mourinho hadn't got injured relatively recently, I don't think we'd be talking about him in this way in these bigger games, because in those games, Havertz would play, and then if then they go 1-0 up, or 2-0 up, which they often do, then a team has to come out against them, which is when you'd bring on Gyokeres and he'd get in behind. So, look, I'm still on the fence about him. He's getting better in open Premier League play, yes, but we aren't yet seeing the fruits of that in the penalty area.
Right, let's have question number 3 then. Dino, it's your turn now. Your mate Declan Rice has said that you're the Tottenham fan, that you should know how they're going to line up under new boss Igor Tudor.
You know, I've had a lot of my Spurs WhatsApp groups going, have you watched anything of Tudor? Have you watched anything of Tudor? And I was like, yeah, I kind of have, and I've done a lot of research this week. And
well, tell us.
Yeah, and I've just lined it up there, and it's going to be, I think, unless it's a completely wild card thing that he does against Arsenal. We've got to bear in mind this is a North London derby first up. What we see on Sunday might not be what we see for the rest of the season. Sure. But having said that, he plays a 3-4-2-1 formation. Okay, so it's a variance on 3-5-2.
It's giving Amorim.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Apart from these two, maybe.
Well, no, yeah, but that's a bit Amorim from the two in there. But I think we might see a slight variance on that. Okay,
it'll be good and it'll work.
Well, there's a few principles here to go on, right? So he likes front foot, aggressive football, and without sounding too much like Ange Postecoglou, it's going to be a bit more Tottenham than it has been under Thomas Frank. That doesn't mean that it's going to be secure at one end and wildly attacking at the other. When I say a bit more Tottenham, I think it means a bit more chaotic.
Right.
Okay, and
because for some people, what's been happening recently has been very Tottenham indeed.
Yes, well, yeah, let's gloss over that. All right, but obviously they're playing Arsenal. They're playing the most organised, well-drilled team in the Premier League, okay? So there's going to be some teething issues here. But one of the things that I would say is he's more direct. And what I want to see, and from this formation in particular, right? So bear in mind that Christian Romero is suspended. So it's perhaps going to be Radu Dragusin or João Palhinha who plays as the right centre-back, and the alternative one will play there as the other centre-back, okay? I don't want to see either of those trying to be clever with Vicario and playing the ball out from here. That is not their game, plus Vicario can't kick it. So, therefore, it's got to go direct. And I think a slight variance on what Tudor might do here is actually play two up. Kolo Muani had his best spell in his entire career under Igor Tudor at Juventus as a centre-forward. But he cannot drop Dominic Solanke, okay? So I'm suspicious we might see two up front. And then Javi Simmons in behind in there. Because what that means is either centre-back, but particularly the right centre-back, I'll come on to Van de Ven in a minute, is that from there you go direct. And he did that for Juventus a lot. He's done that at his other clubs where obviously teams come and look on the press and then go direct into a centre-forward, try and get two together and try and get your best player, which was often Locatelli, or Locatelli dropped in here and played the pass at times, but ball in here, Vlahovic did it, win the second ball and then play from there. And then from there, the wing-backs go and join in and get that shape once the ball has been won in that area. So I've said this before and I often get scoffed at for this, but Saliba is susceptible under the high ball. He doesn't like the bouncing ball. He doesn't like it over his head. On the ground, he's an absolute Rolls Royce, okay? He's up there with Virgil van Dijk with ball on the ground. But bouncing ball and ball over his head, he doesn't like it. Richarlison gave him a real problem at the Emirates in a North London derby. And in this one, I want Solanke to do exactly the same thing. Park on him and hit the ball up to him. Muscle him, move him around, and then get players in there. And Tudor's formation is set up in order to do that. The problem Spurs have got is the injuries elsewhere.
Go on, why?
Well, obviously the best left wing back is Destiny Udogie. He's not playing. Pedro Porro, I'm led to believe, has trained this week, but will he be ready? So it's likely that this will be Archie Gray. And then you've got, as I say, Palhinha and Dragusin here. It will be Conor Gallagher plus either Sarr or Basuma in midfield, because more injuries there as well.
That's a patchy. There's a patchy team with already, as you're saying it, I'm thinking 4 alarm bells went off in my head then of players playing not in their primary position.
Exactly that. And that's where it becomes a bit of an issue. But he has to come in and go to his principles straight away. One thing I would say is that 4 of the best performances so far this season at Tottenham, which were under Thomas Frank, were with 3 at the back. And so, or in a 5 at the back, or a 5-3-2 variation. So they have done it so far. The other thing that's the benefit is this position here, where Jed Spence is a very good 1v1 defender. So against Noni Madueke or against Saka, depending on what happens over there, him and Van de Ven is the best setup against Arsenal's best attacking side. The other thing about Tudor's formation we should talk about is that he releases a centre-back. Now, I think this is going to be something we talk about in coming weeks quite a lot, but it's one to keep an eye on this weekend. He will say to his centre-backs, you can go. So if Van de Ven gets the ball here and plays a ball, let's say, out to his left wing-back, and then there's a forward in there, the ball goes forward, you might see Mickey Van de Ven there with the next pass. And that's wild, right? Because against Arsenal in the counter-attack, maybe not. But you're going to see this. Look out for it. It might be there. If Christian Romero was playing, you might see that there as well, but I don't think you'll see it from Radu Dragusin this weekend. But why that is because he then trusts that 2 stay, he has his 2 midfielders there, and you've got that block, and then you've got players who then can move forward into those positions. And we talk about a front 5, what that then creates is a front 6. And that's the extra player. So it's not the wing-back who does it, it's the centre-back. And I've watched that a few times with the way Juventus have done it, and it's really, really impressive the way that they've done it. So yeah, look, it could be pretty wild from Spurs early doors. It's going to be a wild atmosphere, but it should be pretty entertaining. But look out for that, 3-4-2-1 formation from Igor Tudor.
Brilliant stuff, Dino. Tottenham going to stay up then?
Well, I hope so. Yeah, they've got enough. They've got enough to stay up.